I should have known something was wrong the moment Lila pressed her spare house key into my hand. She didn't look me in the eyes when she did it. Not really. She looked at my forehead or past my shoulder or maybe through me. Anywhere but directly at me. Lila was honest to a fault, sometimes painfully so, and whenever she was uncomfortable, her eyes told on her long before her mouth did. But right then she was hiding something. Something big. And I was too dumb, too trusting, too loyal to ask what. She said it was just a week. Just water the plants, bring in any packages, make it look like someone was home. She said she needed a little time away, and when I asked where she was going, she gave the vaguest answer a person could possibly give without actually lying. Somewhere quiet, she said. Somewhere to think. I should have pressed her. I should have demanded a location, a phone number, something. Instead, I hugged her and told her everything would be okay. I watched her walk down her driveway with that same brittle smile, watched her load her duffel bag into the trunk of her car, watched her pause, just for a second, like she wasn't sure if she was coming back. Then she drove away, and I stood there with a sinking feeling I couldn't explain. Her house sat still behind me like it was watching. I didn't go inside until later that evening. I told myself it was because I was busy with my own errands, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was, something about crossing her threshold made me uneasy. Her neighborhood was normal, nice even. Quiet streets, trimmed hedges, American flags on porches, neighbors who waved even if they didn't know your name. But despite all of that, when I looked at her front door, a soft little thought whispered in the back of my mind. Not yet. When I finally did unlock her door, the air inside felt wrong. Not cold, not musty. Just charged. Like the room had been holding its breath. Everything was spotless. And I mean spotless. Lila was tidy, sure, but this was beyond her usual tidiness. It looked like she'd cleaned the entire house with a sense of urgency, as though she wanted no trace of herself left behind. The floors practically gleamed. The windows sparkled. Nothing was out of place. Nothing showed signs of recent life. Then I saw the box. It sat on her coffee table as if it had been left for me to find. A small, smooth wooden box with strange markings carved into the lid. Not decorative swirls or floral patterns. These were shapes, deliberate, geometric, sharp. I didn't recognize them from any alphabet or culture I'd ever seen. They felt wrong to look at, like trying to make sense of a puzzle with the wrong number of pieces. The lid was slightly open. And inside, I saw a folded note with my name written on it. Only it wasn't Lila's handwriting. I froze. My name looked like it had been written by someone who barely knew how to hold a pen. Jagged strokes, uneven pressure, letters slanted in different directions. Every instinct told me not to touch it. But curiosity, stupid, insistent curiosity, won. Before I reached for it, a soft noise came from upstairs. A thump. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just present. Like a footstep from someone trying not to be heard. My heart jumped into my throat. Someone was in the house. At least, that was my first thought. The rational part of me whispered that houses settle, that air vents knock, that animals get into attics. But the rational part of me felt very small compared to the feeling crawling up my spine. I backed away from the table. My breath came slow, shallow. I listened. Nothing. Not another thump. Not a creak. Not even the hum of the refrigerator. The silence pressed in around me like thick fog. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself Lila probably knocked something over before she left. I grabbed the box anyway. It felt heavier than I expected. Too heavy. My fingers trembled as I opened the note. The ink was faded, smeared, like it had been written in a hurry or by someone whose hands shook. But the message was clear, written in that same unfamiliar, uneven handwriting. Do not stay after dark. My stomach dropped. I read it again, thinking maybe I misunderstood. But the words didn't change. They stared back at me, cold and final, like an instruction carved into stone. I looked around the room, suddenly aware of the fading daylight through the windows. A tense, prickling fear wrapped around my lungs. I didn't know who wrote that note. I didn't know why it was in Lila's house. But something in me believed it. Deeply. I put the note back and closed the box. The carvings seemed to shift when the shadows moved, though I knew it had to be my nerves playing tricks on me. Still, I didn't want to look at it anymore. Before leaving, I checked the locks twice. Then 3 times. By the time I stepped out onto the porch, the sky had turned a dim, bruised shade of purple. I locked the front door and didn't look back. That night, I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing those words. Do not stay after dark. They repeated like a whispering chant, growing sharper each time. I kept thinking about how Lila didn't write the note, how someone else knew my name, how someone else was in her house before me. And still, I convinced myself I was being dramatic. It was just a weird little box. Just an odd sound upstairs. Just a friend struggling with something she didn't want to talk about. The next morning, I returned to the house because that's what friends do. They show up even when things feel strange. Even when they're scared. The sunlight made me feel braver, or maybe just foolish. The house looked normal again, calm and unthreatening. When I opened the door, nothing felt charged. No sense of holding breath. No eerie silence. For a moment, I wondered if last night was all in my head. Then I saw the box again. Only, it wasn't on the coffee table anymore. It sat on the floor beside the hallway closet, the lid wide open, the note gone. My throat tightened so sharply I could barely swallow. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared, unable to process the fact that someone had moved it. I reached for my phone, my hand shaking. Before I could unlock it, a low, muffled scratching sound came from upstairs. Slow, dragging, soft, like fingernails on wood. My heart slammed against my ribs. I should have run. I should have left right then. But fear does strange things. It doesn't always push you away. Sometimes it holds you in place, gluing your feet to the floor. I forced myself to move, to walk toward the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the top, the scratching stopped. The hallway stretched in front of me, doors closed, shadows still. I stood perfectly still, listening. Nothing. Just the faint hum of my own pulse in my ears. I checked the guest room. Empty. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I checked Lila's bedroom. That's when I saw it. Her closet door was cracked open, just a sliver, and inside, something glinted. I pushed the door open slowly. On the closet floor lay a small metal tin, the size of a lunchbox, painted red and rusted on the edges. It hadn't been there the last time I visited her house weeks earlier. I was certain of that. The lid was latched shut with a tiny padlock, but the lock hung open, like someone had already been inside. I knelt down and lifted the lid. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Maybe 50. All black and white. All aged. All disturbing. They showed the same house. Lila's house. But not how it looked now. In the photos, the walls were stripped bare, the furniture gone, and strange symbols, like the ones carved into the wooden box, were painted on the floors. People in the photos stood in circles, their faces blurred or scratched out. Some were holding candles. Some were kneeling. One photo showed a woman in a white dress lying on the floor, surrounded by symbols I didn't understand. At the bottom of the tin was another note. This one was written neatly, in Lila's handwriting. Do not trust the house. I felt the floor tip under me. I sat back hard, clutching the note. My friend, my best friend, had been afraid of her own home. She'd been hiding something. And whatever she'd been hiding, it wasn't just personal. It wasn't just emotional. It was dangerous. I needed answers. And the only person who could give them to me was Lila. Except, she wasn't answering her phone. Not that day. Not the next day. Not the day after that. By the fourth day, I knew in my gut that something terrible had happened. By the fifth day, the police knocked on my door. They said a hiker found a burned-out car in a wooded area outside town. They said it matched the description of Lila's. They said they needed me to come identify something they found near the crash site. My legs barely supported me as I followed them to the station. In a small, cold room, they placed a piece of jewelry on the table. A silver bracelet. The one I gave her for her birthday last year. The one she never took off. They didn't say she was dead. They didn't say it outright. But I could see in their eyes they believed it. I left the station feeling hollow. Numb. My friend was gone. Missing or murdered or something worse. And I had no one to turn to. Except her house. The place she feared. The place she warned me about. The place where someone else knew my name. I drove there at dusk, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. The sun was sinking, painting the sky orange and red. I remembered the warning, do not stay after dark, and I told myself I'd be quick. Just grab the box. Grab the photos. Get out. But when I walked inside, the door clicked shut behind me with a heavy sound I'd never heard before. The house hummed. Quietly. Deeply. Like a living thing. And then somewhere upstairs, something whispered my name. I froze at the bottom of the stairs, every muscle in my body locking at once. My name had never sounded like that before, thin, stretched, almost scraped across the air. I didn't want to believe it was real. I didn't want to believe anything in that house knew I was there. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I stood perfectly still, afraid that the slightest movement would draw something out of the shadows. The house felt darker than it should have. Heavier, like the walls themselves leaned in closer. Then the whisper came again. Soft, dragging, as if the voice came from somewhere deep inside the wood. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. Just a tiny step backward. Then another. I needed to leave. I needed to get out before the last sliver of daylight vanished. My fingers fumbled for the doorknob behind me. It wouldn't turn. I tried again, twisting harder. Nothing. The lock wasn't stuck. No, it felt like someone was holding it from the other side. Someone or something. My breath trembled, fogging in the dim air. It shouldn't have been that cold inside the house. I pressed my shoulder against the door, trying to force it open, but it didn't budge. Panic surged up my spine like lightning. The whisper drifted down the stairs again. Closer this time. I turned away from the door, heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo in the hallway. My instincts screamed at me to run, but fear held me still. I didn't want to look up. I knew something waited at the top of those stairs. Watching. Listening. Then the lights flickered. Just once. But that was enough to send my nerves into a frenzy. I forced myself to breathe. Slow in, slow out. I reminded myself that houses make noises. Wiring flickers. People hear things under stress. I could almost believe that, until I remembered the box. The photos. The strange carvings. The note with my name written by a stranger. Lila had known something was wrong with this place. She'd known it before she left. And whatever she'd been afraid of, it was still here. I backed into the hallway, keeping the stairs in my peripheral vision. My hands shook so violently that my nails clicked against each other. The sun dipped lower outside. I could see the last strip of daylight casting a thin orange line along the living room carpet. I had minutes. Maybe less. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a direction. I only knew I needed to move, anywhere but toward the whisper. I stepped into the kitchen, gripping the counter to keep steady. The air felt denser in here, like humidity without warmth. The window above the sink rattled softly, though there was no wind outside. My eyes landed on something that hadn't been there before. A chair, pulled away from the table. Facing me. My stomach flipped so violently I had to brace myself. I knew with absolute certainty I hadn't touched that chair. I hadn't come into the kitchen earlier. Something had been here before me. Or worse, something was still here. I didn't want to look behind me. I didn't want to see if the chair had moved again. But fear makes people do strange things. Sometimes it pushes you forward when every instinct says run. The note from the box echoed in my mind. Do not trust the house. I needed the box. The photos. Whatever clues Lila left behind. They were the only chance I had of understanding any of this. I forced myself to leave the kitchen, slipping into the hallway again. My eyes darted up the stairs. No shadow moved. No voice whispered. But the silence felt tight, stretched thin like the skin of a drum. I stepped toward the living room, toward the spot where the box had been. The air felt different here, colder somehow. A sharp, metallic scent pricked my nose. It reminded me of old coins or blood. The box lay exactly where I'd seen it. But now the lid was closed. And the carvings on the top seemed deeper, darker, like someone had etched them again with more force. I crouched down slowly and picked it up. My fingertips tingled when they touched the wood. It almost felt warm, like a heartbeat pulsed beneath the surface. I didn't open it. I couldn't, not yet. The whisper came again. This time it didn't say my name. It said, upstairs. My blood froze. My hand jerked, sending the box slipping slightly in my grip. I pulled it close to my chest, stumbling backward. The voice wasn't human. Not fully. It had the shape of a voice, but none of the life. Like a memory of speech. I knew what it wanted. It wanted me to go upstairs. To follow it. To get closer to whatever waited in that dim hallway. But I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to play into whatever game this house was trying to pull me into. I backed toward the front door again, grabbing the handle and twisting with every ounce of strength I had. It didn't move. I pounded on it. Slammed my shoulder into it. Nothing. The air behind me shifted. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough for the hairs on the back of my neck to lift. I didn't turn around. Every part of me screamed that there was something standing in the hallway now. Something that hadn't been there before. Something that didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't step. But I wasn't going to give it the satisfaction of seeing my fear. I stepped sideways toward the dining room, keeping my eyes on the door. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. The dimness inside the house was thickening, swallowing the orange strip of sunlight on the floor. The last light faded. A shift swept through the house like a slow exhale. The walls groaned softly, wood creaking in a way I'd never heard before. The air became almost syrupy, heavy and unmoving. Night had come, and I was still inside. The voice whispered again. Only this time, it sounded like it was right beside my ear. "Look!" I jerked so hard I nearly dropped the box. My elbow slammed against the wall, pain flaring through my arm. I spun around before I could stop myself. The hallway was empty. But the closet door, the one near the stairs, was open just a little wider than it had been before. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to step closer. But something compelled me. Curiosity or fear or desperation, I don't know. All I knew was that I felt pulled forward like a puppet on a string. I approached the closet slowly, legs shaking. Each breath rattled in my chest. I reached out and nudged the door open with the tip of my finger. The closet was empty. Completely empty. Even the tin with the photographs was gone. But on the wall, drawn in something dark and glistening, was a symbol. The same symbol from the box. Only this one was larger, 3 feet wide, and still dripping. As the drip hit the floor, the whisper came again, low and careful. She didn't leave. I staggered backward, clutching the box so tightly my fingers throbbed. "What do you mean?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The house answered with a long, slow creak. Then a new sound drifted from upstairs. Footsteps. Soft at first. Then firmer. Then unmistakable. Something, was walking down the hallway. I ran. Not toward the door. Not toward the kitchen. Toward the one place that felt like it might hide me. The bathroom. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, stumbled back until my spine hit the wall. I clutched the box against my chest, breath coming in frantic bursts. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Slow. Deliberate. One step. Then another. Then another. I pressed my hand over my mouth, afraid my breathing would give me away. The bathroom felt smaller by the second, the shadows deeper. The sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything else. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. They paused. The silence that followed was worse than the footsteps. Then I heard it. A sound I will never forget. A soft, gentle tapping. On the bathroom door. I squeezed my eyes shut as tears slid down my cheeks. My mind raced, clawing for any explanation. An intruder, a trick, a hallucination. But nothing fit. Nothing made sense. Nothing felt human. The tapping stopped. A faint whisper soothed against the crack under the door. "Let me in." I didn't move. "You know me." I shook my head, even though it couldn't see me. "You've known me a long time." My stomach twisted violently. I didn't answer. "You've known me since before you were born." Every thought in my mind shattered. Something scratched softly at the bottom of the door. Gently. Almost curiously. Then the voice changed. It softened into something familiar, something warm, something devastating. "Please, it's me." It sounded like Lila. My breath hitched painfully. No, it wasn't her. It couldn't be her. But the voice, God, the voice sounded exactly like her. The way she spoke when she was scared. The tremble she tried to hide. "Let me in," it begged. I stared at the door. "Let me in. I don't want to be alone in here." I squeezed the box. The wood pulsed, just once like a heartbeat. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. Minutes crawled by. Maybe hours. I don't know. Eventually the tapping stopped. The scratching stopped. The voice went quiet. Silence fell heavy. Then something far worse happened. The doorknob turned. Not violently. Not forcefully. Slowly. Like someone on the other side was trying to see if I'd changed my mind. I slapped my hand over the lock, holding it in place, my whole arm shaking. The knob twisted again, harder this time. The lock rattled under my palm. Then, the doorknob stopped turning. Silence again. I waited. Frozen. Listening to my own breath. Then, from the other side of the door, I heard the faintest whisper. "We're not done." My vision blurred with tears. The footsteps moved away. Up the stairs. Down the hall. Then, a door upstairs slammed shut. Hard. So hard dust drifted down from the ceiling. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally gathered enough courage to stand, my knees nearly buckled beneath me. I twisted the lock, cracked the bathroom door open just enough to peek out. The house was still. Dark. Silent. I stepped out slowly, clutching the box. My eyes darted across every shadow, every corner. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No whispers. But something new lay at the bottom of the stairs. A photograph. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It showed the same symbols from the box. But this time, there were 2 figures standing inside the circle. One of them was Lila. The other was me. I stared at that photograph so long my vision doubled. My own face, my actual face, looked back at me from the grainy black and white image, standing inside a circle of symbols I had never seen until 2 days ago. My expression in the picture wasn't frightened or confused. It was blank, empty, as if whoever took the photo had captured a version of me that wasn't fully present. My hand shook as I turned the photo over. The back was blank. No date, no writing, no explanation, nothing to soften the blow of what I was seeing. It wasn't possible. There was no way. This had to be a trick, a fake, something someone created to frighten me. But the longer I stared, the more impossible it became to deny. The shape of my jaw, the small scar above my eyebrow, the way my hair curled slightly at the ends, it was me. But I'd never stood in that circle. I didn't even recognize the room the picture was taken in. The silence around me tightened, as though the air thickened with my confusion. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance. The photograph slipped from my fingers and fluttered onto the bottom step, staring up at me like a dare. I had to get out. I had to leave that house before whatever lived in it decided I didn't need to. I bolted for the front door again, gripping the handle with both hands. I twisted, pulled, shoved my shoulder into it. But the door didn't move. I kicked it, screamed into it, slammed my fists against it. Nothing. It was like the house itself sealed me inside. The shadows in the corners seemed to deepen, filling in like ink spreading in water. I felt watched. Not from one direction, no. It felt like something watched me from everywhere at once. My breath grew shallow. I clutched the box under my arm and backed away from the door, fighting the rising panic. Then something happened. A soft breeze, impossible in a sealed house, drifted past my cheek. A cold, whispering breath. And with it I heard a voice. Not the same distorted whisper that had called my name. Not the strange, mimicry voice that sounded like Lila. This voice was new. Lower. Clearer. Almost angry. You were chosen. The words crawled into my ears and rooted themselves deep in my chest. Chosen for what? And by who? I spun around, searching the room, but all I saw were shadows, long, reaching shadows cast by no source I could name. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. We are waiting, the voice said again. Something moved at the top of the stairs. I didn't see it clearly, just a brief shift in the darkness, a ripple like a shadow passing behind a curtain. But it was enough to know I wasn't alone. Whatever it was, it had weight, presence, intent. I forced myself to breathe. If I wasn't going to die in that house, I needed to think. I needed to act. I needed answers. I climbed the stairs. Every step felt like stepping deeper into a pit I couldn't see the bottom of. The air grew colder as I ascended. Not natural cold. Not drafty house cold. Deep cold, like the kind that lives under stone. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out in front of me, darker than before. The door that had slammed earlier, Lila's bedroom, was cracked open now. A thin line of blackness oozed through the crack like spilled ink. I held the box tightly, as though it could shield me somehow. When I reached her bedroom door, I paused, my breath fogging. I pushed gently, and it creaked open with a slow, agonizing sound. The room was wrong. All the furniture had been moved. Her dresser faced the wall. Her nightstand sat in the middle of the floor. The lamp was overturned but unbroken. Her bed, God help me, her bed was standing upright, resting against the far wall like someone had propped it there with intention. And on the floor, carved deep into the wood, was another symbol. This one was massive, stretching from wall to wall, the lines sharp and branching. Dark stains filled the grooves, old stains dried and cracked. It looked like it had been carved years ago. The air above the symbol shimmered slightly, as if heat rose from it. Except the room was freezing. A sudden pressure filled my head, like someone cupped their hands over my ears. You stood here once. The voice wasn't out loud. It was inside me. Not a thought. Not a memory. Something else entirely. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, I didn't. You did. The pressure tightened. My vision wavered. The room seemed to shift in my peripheral vision, bending slightly, warping as though the walls weren't solid. You returned. I squeezed the box harder, my knuckles white. I don't know what you want, I whispered. I don't know what this is. But the voice didn't answer this time. Instead, something clicked behind me. I spun around. The closet door had opened. Just a few inches. The darkness inside was thick, unmoving. It swallowed the weak light spilling through the bedroom window. My breath hitched when I spotted movement inside. A single hand reached out. Pale. Thin. Fingers curled inward like a beckoning gesture. My knees buckled. I stumbled backward until I hit the edge of the massive carved symbol. The wood felt warm beneath my foot, like a living thing. The hand in the closet didn't move again. It simply hovered there, half visible, fingers crooked just enough to suggest an invitation. Or a warning. I couldn't step toward it. My body refused. But something else in the room drew my attention. A small, torn scrap of paper lay on the dresser, trembling slightly as though stirred by breath. Its body lengthened unnaturally with the motion. I bolted from the room, slamming the door shut. The wood shook violently as something thudded against it from the other side. Once. Twice. Then silence. I backed away, gasping for air. Something thudded again, but not from the guest room. This came from downstairs. A door slammed. The house groaned from its foundation, a deep trembling that rippled through the walls. Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate series of knocks coming from the front door. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. Knock. I shouldn't have gone near that door. I knew it. Every part of my body screamed to stay away. But something tugged me forward, dragging me down the stairs against my better judgment. The knocking continued. When I reached the bottom, I could see a shadow through the frosted glass panel. A human shape. Still. Waiting. I approached slowly. The knocking stopped. A voice drifted through the door. Low. Familiar. Open the door. It's me. My heart slammed. It sounded exactly like Lila. I pressed my palm against the door, trembling. Lila. I whispered. Yes, the voice said gently. Please. Let me in. I closed my eyes. Because even though it sounded like her, something in the voice was wrong. Too smooth. Too calm. Too practiced. I didn't unlock the door. I didn't speak again. The voice remained on the other side of the wood, waiting. Then slowly, deliberately, it said my name, and the entire house exhaled. For a long moment I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I didn't dare move with that voice hanging in the air like a blade. It knew my name. Not guessed it. Not mimicked it loosely. It spoke it perfectly. Same inflection Lila used, same softness, same familiarity. But underneath it, woven into the sound like a second voice layered beneath the first, was something deeper. Rougher. Ancient. As if whatever stood behind that door had worn her voice like a coat, but the seams were tearing. Please, it said again, quieter this time. Please open the door. The floor vibrated slightly under my feet, like something outside pressed its weight against the house. I pressed my back against the nearest wall, gripping the box to my chest. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The voice lingered, waiting for me to surrender to it. When I didn't, its tone shifted, just slightly. The softness drained out, replaced by a thin, cold impatience. You have something that belongs to me. My heartbeat stalled. The box. My hands clenched around it reflexively. The voice changed again, now deeper, no attempt to hide the distortion. Give it back. I took a step backward, then another. Whatever it was, whatever wanted the box so desperately, it was not getting inside. I felt the weight of the house pressing down around me, the shadows growing more restless, as if the structure itself strained to hold something back. The voice fell silent. A moment later, a slow scrape traveled down the other side of the door. Not fingernails. Something heavier. Thicker. Like a palm dragging lightly across the wood. Then the knocking resumed. But this time it wasn't human. The first knock rattled the hinges. The second shook the frame. The third made a hairline crack thread through the glass. I backed toward the stairs, breathing hard, forcing myself not to collapse into panic. I had to move. I had to get upstairs, barricade myself, figure out what the hell this box was. The voice outside spoke one more time, flat, expressionless. You don't get to choose. You were already chosen. Another deep crack split the wood. I ran up the stairs. 2 steps at a time. My legs ached, breath ripping through my lungs. When I reached the landing, I glanced over my shoulder. The front door bulged outward. Once. Twice. Each impact deeper. I sprinted down the hallway and threw myself into Lila's room, slamming the door behind me. The carved symbol on the floor pulsed faintly, as if reacting to the violence downstairs. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, trying to think. I needed a phone. My phone was downstairs. Of course it was. I'd thrown it on the coffee table earlier. Lila's landline had been dead. There had to be another phone in this house. There had to be. A small, muffled sound made me freeze. A laugh. Soft. Too close. I turned slowly. The room was empty. But the closet door was open again. Just an inch more than it had been. The darkness inside was thicker than before, almost textured, as if something moved within it but never crossed into view. I took one slow step backward, keeping my eyes locked on the narrow slit of black. And then, from inside, I heard her voice. My voice. Calling my own name. Not whispering. Not distorted. My voice, exactly as I had sounded only minutes earlier. Help me. The same words the creature in the guest room had used. But this time, hearing it in my own voice, something inside me snapped. I stumbled backward toward the dresser, nearly dropping the box. My fingers trembled as I set it down. I had to open it. I didn't want to. Everything in my body screamed not to. But the house wanted it opened. The thing outside wanted it opened. Whatever was in that closet wanted it opened. And if all of them wanted the same thing, then the last thing I should do was obey. But I needed to know why. I needed to know what Lila had gotten herself into. What she had dragged me into. With stiff fingers, I flipped the latch. Nothing happened. No explosion. No blinding light. No howl of ancient spirits. Just the box opening quietly to reveal a stack of photographs. Dozens. Stacks and stacks, all taken at different times. Some showed the house from the outside, dawn, dusk, rain, snow. Some showed the interior rooms. But many showed the same thing. People standing in that carved symbol. Different people, every age, every gender, every race. Always alone. Always expressionless. Some looked terrified. Some looked vacant. Some stared directly at the camera with pupils dilated far too wide, faces slack, hands limp at their sides as if suspended between worlds. In one photograph, a young man was shown standing in the symbol. Behind him, faintly visible, was the tall, pale figure I'd seen in Lila's closet. Another photo showed an older woman, her face frozen mid-scream, standing in the circle with fresh dark stains at her feet. My stomach twisted and I flipped through them faster, desperate to find something, anything about Lila. And then I did. A photograph at the very bottom, newer than the others. It showed her standing in the symbol. Her face was streaked with tears. Her hands were pressed tightly together, as though she were praying. Her eyes looked right into the camera, pleading. The tall figure behind her was clearer now, no longer blurred, as if it had willingly allowed itself to be fully captured. Its hand rested lightly on her shoulder. I gagged, swallowing bile. On the back of the photo, words were scrawled in frantic handwriting. Don't let it in. Don't stand in the circle. Don't trust the voice. Run. The pounding downstairs grew more violent. The doorframe downstairs splintered loudly. The house trembled. I shoved the photos back into the box. My breath came fast, my vision blurring around the edges. The voices in my head began to overlap. Lila's voice, my voice, the deep whisper that said I was chosen. I backed toward the far wall, trying to steady myself. The light in the room flickered. Then something creaked behind me. I turned. Standing at the foot of the pushed-up bed, where seconds earlier nothing had been, was a figure. Small. Bent. A woman. Her long gray hair hung in tangled strands around her face, her clothes old and torn. She looked like she had been living in the dark for years. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dimness. When she spoke, her voice was barely a rasp. You shouldn't have come back. I pressed myself against the dresser, unable to move. Who are you? She didn't blink. Her gaze flicked toward the closet, then back to me. It knows you now, she whispered. It followed her. And now it follows you. Ice spread through my bloodstream. You need to leave this place, she breathed. Before it's too late. Before night falls. I tried, I choked out. The door. It will not let you go. Not now. Her eyes darkened, a deep sorrow settling over her. You have something it wants. My fingers tightened around the box. What is this? Why does it want it? Her head twitched, as though listening to something moving through the walls. She flinched, stepping back quickly. No more questions, she hissed. You must not be here when it chooses to take you. The house groaned again, louder this time. The front door slammed once, twice, 3 times as if something massive threw itself against it. Listen to me, she said, grabbing my wrist with a grip shockingly strong. Burn the box. Burn everything inside it. That creature needs the bindings lifted. Without these, she tapped the lid, it cannot cross into the world fully. Another slam shook the house. Cracks spidered across the ceiling. It wants in, she whispered. It is hungry. Before I could respond, a long, dragging sound echoed down the hall. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Measured. The woman's eyes widened with fear. It hears us. Her grip tightened around my wrist, nails digging in. Run. I hesitated, frozen in terror. Run. I bolted past her into the hallway. The lights flickered wildly. A shadow at the far end stretched unnaturally long, too long, bending around the corner as though following me. I gripped the banister and sprinted down the stairs. Behind me, the heavy footsteps quickened. The front door had stopped shaking. It was too quiet. I reached the bottom step. And then, the door slowly, silently unlocked. The latch clicked. The knob turned on its own. I staggered backward, clutching the box. A cold wind gusted through the crack as the door creaked open. Just an inch. Enough for a pale hand to curl around the edge. Long fingers slowly wrapped around the wood. And a voice, smooth, calm, certain, spoke from the darkness outside. You can't run from what you already joined. The darkness outside bent inward, shifting, forming a shape. The tall figure stepped into the doorway. Inside the house. Its head tilted slowly toward me. You came back to finish what you started. And as it took one step closer, the floorboards beneath my feet split. And the entire house exhaled again. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just ran. The house groaned as the tall, pale figure leaned its shape into the doorway. Its shadow stretched across the floorboards like spilled ink, reaching for me with fingers that weren't really fingers at all, just long, bending points of darkness. Behind me, upstairs, the old woman let out a trembling breath. Go, she whispered. I heard her voice crack, not with fear but with certainty. I'll hold it. I didn't know what she could possibly do against that thing, but she pushed past me, fast for someone so small and frail. She planted herself at the top of the staircase like a barrier made of bones and stubbornness. The creature's head tilted toward her. She didn't flinch. Not this one, she said. And then she slammed the bedroom door shut behind her, trapping herself inside with the entity. I heard her latch it, twist the lock, drag something heavy across the floor. And then, silence. The kind that squeezes your lungs. I stumbled back, gripping the banister. The floor trembled under my feet. Something slammed against the bedroom door upstairs, hard enough to splinter wood. The force nearly knocked me off balance. Another slam. Another. Another. Her voice rose, thin but determined, shouting words I didn't understand in a language that vibrated through the walls. The creature hissed, long, low, animalistic. I didn't wait to hear the outcome. I bolted down the remaining stairs, nearly slipping on the last step. The box thudded against my ribs as I clutched it tight. The air downstairs grew colder by the second, as though the house inhaled me deeper into itself. The lights flickered. For a moment, everything went dim, only the faint pulse of that carved symbol upstairs casting a glow through the cracks in the floorboards. Then a sound split the air. A scream. Not hers. His. The creature. A guttural, furious roar that made the windows rattle, and the picture frames crashed to the floor. Oh God, I whispered. She did something. She'd heard it. Or slowed it. Or angered it. None of those possibilities comforted me. I sprinted for the front door. It was open just an inch from where the creature had pushed it, moonlight slicing across the floor like a silver blade. I lunged, and the door slammed shut, right in my face. Hard. I screamed from the shock and yanked on the handle. Locked. I twisted, pulled, slammed my shoulder into it. No use. The door felt like it had been fused to the frame, held shut by something that was not wood or metal. Behind me, upstairs, the bedroom door cracked loudly. A fissure split through it. Another slam. Another break. She wasn't going to hold it long. I ran to the nearest window. The curtains fluttered, cold wind sneaking through a crack in the glass. I slid my fingers under the frame and shoved upward with everything I had. It didn't budge. Not an inch. I grabbed the lamp off the end table, raised it above my head, and smashed it against the glass. It bounced. Didn't even crack. My breath turned shaky and thin. No, no, no. I hit it again. And again. Not a scratch. The glass seemed to ripple slightly, not break, not bend, just ripple like thick water blocking me from escaping. Come on. I screamed at it. Let me out. Upstairs, the creature roared again, angrier now, louder, like the old woman had struck it someplace that mattered. Then something tore. A heavy thud. A crash. Silence. My heart stopped. Footsteps followed, slow, uneven, dragging, as if whatever moved now had been wounded. Or enraged. It stepped into the hallway above me. The ceiling creaked. Dust drifted. I backed toward the center of the living room, still hugging the box tight against my stomach. Think, I whispered to myself, shaking with adrenaline. Think. And then I saw it. The fireplace. Stone. Wide. Cold. Old. Fireplaces went somewhere. Somewhere that wasn't inside this house. I ran to it, dropping to my knees in front of the hearth. My hands moved frantically along the stone edges, feeling for loose bricks, hidden catches, anything. I reached into the grate, only ashes and cold charcoal. Then my fingers brushed metal. A latch. I froze. I pulled it. The back panel of the fireplace cracked, then swung inward an inch, revealing a narrow, dark crawlspace that smelled of earth and old air. The creature stepped down another stair. Slow. Hungry. I shoved the panel harder. It opened just enough for me to squeeze through. I crawled inside, dragging the box with me, my shoulders scraping against the stone. I tried to pull the panel closed. It stuck halfway. The creature reached the bottom of the stairs. Its shadow stretched across the far wall, taller now, more jagged, as though anger reshaped it. I pushed harder. The panel groaned. The creature stepped into the living room. It paused, listening. I froze, my hand still on the panel. The air thickened, pressing against my skin, my ribs, my throat. Then the creature whispered, "I see you." The panel slammed shut in my face. Total darkness swallowed me. The crawlspace was tight, so tight I couldn't turn around or lift my head fully. I crawled on my elbows, dragging the box along, the rough earth scratching my arms. Dust coated my tongue, thick enough to taste. Behind me, on the other side of the fireplace wall. Slam. A deep impact. Slam. The creature pounded against the stones. Slam. The crawlspace quaked. If that wall gave out, I'd be crushed, or worse. I crawled faster. The passage sloped downward, colder and wetter the deeper I went. Mud squished under my palms. Something skittered over my hand. A bug, or maybe just a root, but I didn't slow down long enough to care. The pounding behind me grew sharper, stone cracking. I could hear the creature breathing now. Its breath was wrong, long, drawn-out inhales, but no exhales. As if it only collected air, never releasing it. Slam. Crack. A piece of stone fell behind me. I crawled faster. The passage forked into two narrow tunnels. Both pitch black. Both descending. Both silent. What do I do? I whispered, my voice trembling. A faint sound echoed from the left tunnel. Crying. A woman. Soft, broken. Familiar. Help me. Lila. My throat tightened. But then I remembered the creature mimicking my voice upstairs. It could sound like anyone. I clenched my jaw. No, I whispered. You're not her. I went right. The tunnel sloped further downward until it leveled out, and suddenly the earth beneath my hands changed, still damp but smoother. Man-made. Flattened. A path. My heartbeat quickened. Yes, yes. I followed it, scraping and sliding along the packed dirt, until I saw something ahead. Light. A faint, pale glow filtering through a grate at the end of the passage. I crawled toward it, hope burning through the terror. Freedom. Air. Outside. I reached the grate and pushed. It didn't move. I rammed my shoulder into it. Barely budged. I pressed both palms against it and shoved with everything I had left. It shifted. Just a little. Behind me. The creature screeched. The sound shot through the tunnel like a shockwave. The earth vibrated. Dust and pebbles rained down. I froze, listening to its limbs scrape along the crawlspace, widening the path with inhuman force. It was coming fast. I slammed my palms against the grate again. Harder. Harder. My muscles screamed. My shoulders burned. The grate groaned, shifting outward another inch. Just enough for a breeze to hit my face. Cold. Real. Outside. The creature shrieked again, closer now, maybe 20 feet behind me. I shoved. An inch more. 10 feet. Another shove. 5 feet. A massive cracking sound echoed down the tunnel. The creature had widened the passage even more. Its pace quickened. 4 feet. 3. Come on, I gasped, pushing with everything inside me. Come on, come on. The grate popped loose. Cold night air rushed in. I threw the grate aside and dragged myself out into grass. Damp earth. The backyard. I collapsed onto the lawn, coughing, the box still clutched in my arms. Behind me, the creature slammed into the edge of the crawlspace opening, but the tunnel was too narrow for it to push through. It clawed at the earth violently, the ground trembling beneath me. I scrambled back, crawling away from the hole. The creature let out a long, furious roar that ripped through the night like lightning splitting the sky. Then, silence. Just the cold wind. Just the crickets. Just the dark. I lay there on the grass, heaving breath after breath, staring at the stars above me. Free. Alive. But shaking down to my bones. I didn't know how long I stayed there. 10 minutes? An hour? Time blurred. My mind felt foggy, distant, too exhausted to process the terror. The house loomed over me, quiet now, lifeless. No lights. No movement. Just a hollow, black silhouette against the night sky. The box was still in my arms. I wanted to throw it, burn it, crush it, anything. But before I could move, a voice drifted through the hole in the earth. Weak. Fading. The old woman. She whispered one last time. Run before it finds another way. Then, nothing. The house felt wrong the moment the sun went down. During the day, its strangeness was manageable. Odd shadows, barely their footsteps, distant whispers I could rationalize as pipes settling or my imagination looping the same fears over and over. But at night, the house seemed to inhale, to expand, to wake, and I was inside it. I sat at the kitchen island with the folder I had retrieved from the locked bedroom. Its contents were spread across the counter like a body on an autopsy table. Names, photographs, timestamps, surveillance angles. And in the center, a packet labeled with my best friend's name, Mara Vance. She had never returned from her trip, and now I understood why. The first page was a profile, basic details, her job, her gym routine, even the color of her car. But the second page made my stomach drop. Notes on behavior. Notes on fear. Notes on me. Friend visits house twice weekly. Friend has house keys. Friend unaware. Underlined twice. I stared at those words until they blurred. A noise snapped my attention toward the hallway, slow, padded footsteps, like someone walking barefoot on carpet. I swallowed hard. I wasn't alone. I gathered the papers quickly, sliding everything back into the folder. My hands shook so badly I could barely close the clasp. Whoever had been watching Mara had been watching me too, and they were inside the house with me. I checked my phone. No signal. Again. It had been working earlier. I had checked. I had even texted my brother an hour ago, and the message had delivered. But now the bars were gone. A deliberate choice. A blackout. My chest tightened as I stared at the dark hallway. The footsteps had stopped. The silence felt thick. Intentional. I breathed slowly, forcing myself to stay controlled. If they were watching, listening, studying, I couldn't let them know how terrified I was. But my body betrayed me. My hands sweated. My breaths were uneven. My heart hammered so loudly I was certain it echoed. I picked up the folder and backed into the kitchen, scanning the walls, the ceiling, the doorway. The house had 3 floors. Too many places for someone to hide. Too many blind corners. Too many dark rooms. The air felt colder. A faint, steady creaking noise drifted from above, rhythmic, like someone shifting their weight on old wooden boards. The attic. I hadn't checked the attic. I had checked the basement, the bedrooms, the closets, even behind the curtains, but I hadn't gone into the attic, because the metal string that dangled from the panel in the hallway ceiling had always been curled up neatly, as if someone else pulled it up, out of sight, when they didn't want anyone to know it had been used. Now it hung down, straight, visible, pulled. My throat tightened. Someone had been upstairs. Recently. Maybe even still. I backed up toward the kitchen drawer, where Mara kept her small utility tools. I pulled it open quietly. Scissors. Tape. A tiny screwdriver set. Not enough. Then I remembered, the bottom drawer. The one she told me she kept for emergencies. When I first came over years ago, she had shown me a small baton-like flashlight. Heavy enough to break a skull. It wasn't in the usual spot now. I slid the bottom drawer open. There it was. Cold. Metal. Solid in my grip. The footsteps overhead stopped. Silence. Whoever was up there knew I knew. Then 3 slow taps. Deliberate. Measured. Directly above me. Tap. 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 I froze. It wasn't random noise. It wasn't settling wood. It was a message. A warning. Or an invitation. I took a slow step backward. Then another. The tapping stopped. Then, from the second floor landing, another sound. The soft, dragging whisper of fabric against carpet. Someone had come down. They weren't trying to hide anymore. I turned off all kitchen lights until only the faint glow from the microwave clock illuminated the room. My eyes adjusted. Shadows deepened. The hallway grew darker. A shape appeared at the top of the stairs. A silhouette. My breath caught in my throat. Wide shoulders. Thin limbs. Arms too long. Standing perfectly still. Watching. I lifted the metal flashlight slightly, keeping my eyes on the shape. It didn't move. Didn't shift. Didn't flinch even when the floor creaked under my foot. Who are you? I whispered, though I didn't expect a response. The figure didn't answer. Then it moved slowly, smoothly, descending 1 step at a time. Almost careful. Almost polite, but wrong. Something in the motion was unnatural. Too controlled. Too deliberate. It stopped halfway down the stairs. The low light from the kitchen caught part of its face. A mask. Not a costume mask. A sculpted silicone one. Human features too smooth, too symmetrical. Eyes too large. Lips too soft. A face that tried to look human and failed. My blood ran cold. It tilted its head at me. No breathing. No sound. No shift behind the eyes. Just watching. Studying. The same way the letters in the folder had studied Mara. The same way someone had been watching me. My instinct screamed, run. I stepped backward, gripping the flashlight tighter. The figure took another step down. Then another. Steady. Purposeful. I turned and ran toward the back door, folder pressed to my chest. I twisted the lock, yanked the handle. The door didn't move. Locked. Bolted. Jam mechanism engaged. I hadn't engaged the bolt. Someone else had. I stumbled back as the figure reached the bottom of the stairs. Its quiet footsteps whispered across the hardwood floor. I darted toward the front of the house. As I passed the living room, something caught my eye. The security monitor screen on the wall. All 8 camera feeds were open. Feed 1, the porch. Feed 2, the backyard. Feed 3, the hallway. Feed 4, the living room. Then, Feed 8, the kitchen. A live view from above showed my own body in grainy black and white, standing inches from the camera's invisible eye. I whirled around and spotted it, a small lens hidden inside the vent near the ceiling. They weren't just watching the outside. They were inside every room. And they had been for months. A sound behind me made me turn. The masked figure stood in the kitchen doorway, blocking my exit. In its hand, it held something small and rectangular. My phone. It must have taken it when I set it down earlier. I remembered now. I had placed it on the hallway table when I first opened the folder. I hadn't checked it since. The figure raised the phone, turning the dark screen toward me. Then, with one smooth motion, it crushed it in its palm until the glass shattered. It dropped the pieces on the floor between us. A message. A threat. A final warning. I backed up slowly, inching toward the staircase. The figure didn't follow. It simply watched. Waiting. As if it wanted me upstairs. Wanted me isolated. Wanted me exactly where the cameras could see me best. I refused to play its game. I moved toward the front door, silently praying the deadbolt wasn't jammed. I reached it, turned the lock, it clicked open. Relief surged. Then a hand touched my shoulder. Cold fingers curled lightly, almost gently, around my sweater. I screamed and swung the heavy flashlight blindly behind me, connecting with something solid. The figure staggered backward, the silicone mask cracking at the cheek. A tear split down the face, revealing pale skin beneath. Human. A man. He hissed sharply, a real human sound, and lunged at me. I bolted out the front door, running barefoot down the steps into the yard across the sidewalk. I didn't turn back. Not until I was halfway across the street, and the porch light behind me flicked on. He stood in the doorway, mask half broken, head tilted, watching me the same way he had watched Mara. The same way he had waited. The same way he had lived in the house with her, unnoticed, until she vanished. I ran until my lungs burned. I ran until my throat was raw. I didn't stop until I reached the next block, where a couple walking their dog froze as I stumbled toward them, sobbing, shaking, begging for help. They called the police immediately. When officers arrived and stormed the house, they searched every room, every closet, every crawl space. They found cameras, wires, tools. But they did not find the man. Not in the attic. Not in the basement. Not in the yard. Not anywhere. He had slipped away the moment I escaped. A ghost in plain sight. A predator who studied routines, movements, weaknesses. Someone who lived in Mara's house. Someone who never intended to leave. Someone who had been preparing for me next.